I have been weighing on some things, and it's not any just any little thing that so I get messages, right? I feel like my greatest gift is that great source will give me teaching moments, and they will direct my gaze to some pretty heavy stuff. And the reason I wanted this to be the Messy Human Tarot was because originally I wanted to support other people's growth and being comfortable with being human. And the original title was Tenebrous Gate. And then at one point I was like, I'll do the Messy Human Project, because I didn't want to be defined by tarot. Yeah, tarot is a part of who I am. Tarot, I love tarot. I could have it right here, right next to me. But it's like a tapestry. There's so many different images in that, and there's threads that make the tapestry. And it's beautiful when it's completed, but you need those different strands to create something beautiful. And when I first decided that I was gonna be Tenebrous Gate, the magical name I had taken up was Morgana Tenebrous, because I was like, this is who I am. And then it shifted into Ruby Garnet, and now it's coming back, because the wheel has spun and it's landed on 10 for completion, where I'm like, wow, I just went through a cycle. And I've been, I want consistency in the work I'm doing. And I've as over time, I've realized I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories. I love having I like the personal narrative approach to supporting and helping people and talking about some real life stuff, right? And as I was going through this journey, I was like, I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to do it. Yeah, maybe I will eventually do it. It'll probably happen, right? But you kind of realize over time, you're like, who am I? Who am I? And I got to this weird thought, because I'm going through the tarot. I'm going through the major arcana for my reflections. And I got to the Sun card, which to me is become your truth, man. Become your truth. Who am I? I would like to say I'm in many ways a bard, a storyteller, but not on here, which means eventually I'm going to have to go back to being the Messy Human Project, which is fine. And I do need to become a little more consistent in expressing who I am versus creating this made up version to get hits and likes and get approval. And that will happen over time, because when you become your truth, when you decide, I like who I am, I'm worthy, and I am valuable, and the valuable version of who I am is who I am. It's not pretending to be somebody else. If you like anything you hear, please like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, because that can help me expand, that can help me become bigger. And over time, you are going to see a shift. You may see a lot less tarot. I probably won't do as many readings. It doesn't mean there won't be any, but we're going to make a shift towards storytelling. We're going to talk about some uncomfortable, messy stuff, because the goal here, the goal is to create light wherever we go, right? And to allow an understanding that it's okay to be messy. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. And you're going to hear some stuff. You're going to hear some. There's always a potential for triggers. There's always going to be a potential for some uncomfortable stories, like the one I have coming up for you in just a minute, where I am going to discuss about the destructive nature of silence regarding who you are, in terms of a true self, but also to the transgenerational trauma of silence and how it plays out in families and how it's impacted me and maybe potentially maybe even you. You never know. You could be someone who was taught at a young age to be quiet, to be convenient. I want you to be aware it could be uncomfortable. It could be very triggering. And don't mind me fiddling with my hair. This is kind of why I want to switch to a podcast at some point or have a podcast version along with this. So if you're like, I can't deal with her fiddling with herself, then it's fine. It's totally fine. But so once upon a time, there was this pretty awesome person called my Nana. She was a very young girl. Colombia. And she escaped Colombia. Now, we do not necessarily know all the details of her life in Colombia. We do have our educated guesses was that there was a possibility that her family was important in some kind of way, but also sorry, I'm like driving myself nuts. There is an understanding that in this time period, you had to be careful about what was said, how it was said, where it was said, because words were very dangerous and could lead to death and destruction in your life. And so she escaped a bad situation. She ended up in the US where she got treated like a servant by her own family members. And later on, there's a story where apparently, and my dad didn't know it at the time, but he figured it out by himself, that she would cross a whole street to get away from her brother. And I'm not going to get into a lot of the details, but I want you to understand that this wonderful woman had a really hard life. And when she came to the US, what most, I think, had no choice to do was to exterminate their culture and their language to kind of minimize what made them look different. Because if they looked too different or sounded too different, if they weren't American enough, that was a very dangerous thing, because there was some gang violence and there was some racial issues, of course. And so even though my dad was not necessarily a part of the culture, ethnically, yes, he looked a little different, right? He wasn't American enough, even if he could talk American enough. And he experienced a lot of difficult, trying things from what he told me. But the transgenerational trauma of silence, of be careful what you say, followed. And hit me right in the face growing up like in the 90s, where there was still some sexism issues going on. There's still like some bullying in schools. And I felt like me being me was inconvenient, inappropriate. And this was also to the time period where paganism was starting to happen, like a little bit different from the 60s, I'm sure. Like, it's like young people are getting access to stuff, and parents are getting worried about their kids, going to the devil, to the dark side. And I remember, being one of those sad, lonely, emotional kids who I just wanted to belong. I wanted to be accepted. I felt like I was always the butt of a joke. I was often heavily disapproved of, bullied, made fun of. I was definitely the weirdo kid, and I was very annoyingly loud. And it's even, honestly, to be perfectly honest, even as an adult, I've been shushed by friends, by colleagues. My personality was incredibly uncomfortable for other people. And so this had a very depressing effect on my mental well-being, where I don't know if anyone out there has heard the term, if you're depressed, rest. I came up with this term just very recently. If you're repressed, you're gonna get depressed. I came up with me because I kind of had this realization. A lot of my depression is connected to my repression of myself, of my voice, of just my truth, right? And when you spend many, many years, covering your truth because you have toxic bosses or because you have coworkers who are like, we gotta keep the volume down, guys. And they really mean you. They're just trying not to make it look like they're targeting you, but they're like, when you grow up being made fun of and heavily disapproved of, when someone's talking about you just become like really psychically in tune to it, going like, what? Just tell me to my face if I'm loud. And give me a good reason why I should be quiet. Is it because you don't like my personality? Like, I kid you not. I have been just so many times in my life. To the point where, like, sometimes, like, if it happens, my feelings still get hurt. But at the same time, you kind of, like, get to a point where, it's not unexpected. And you also do have no choice, though, to try your best to not take it personally, and to try your best to also to not allow what they think to define you or to influence you. Not that that's easy. It's sometimes easier said than done, and so I had, because I'm doing my tarot reflections, right? I'm going through the major arcana, man. And I got to the moon card. And I was emotionally wrecked for 2 days. 2 days. And a lot of it was because the moon card is about the unconscious, the things that we put in the shadow, that we hide and cover up, and then on a good full moon it comes full rearing outwards, right? And you're like, oh, like, you can't hide from it, Has anyone worked on an inpatient unit, hospital? Like, have you ever been on an inpatient psych hospital and the full moon happens? It's true. And you feel crazy, and you're thinking, like, there's something wrong with me. But it's not that there's anything wrong with you per se. It's just the truth is suddenly coming to the forefront. And then the sun card, because I feel like the moon is know your truth, while the sun card is be your truth, right? because you have to get through the darkness to get to the sun card. You have to. And so when I got to the sun card, finally, I actually started feeling more emotionally regulated. And like, yeah, I'm able to breathe. I'm able to breathe. This feels so much better. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Great source of all that is. But still, it's still like I'm in this weird place where I'm like, you know what? I'm still kind of like a little kind of, I'm like still a little shaky. I'm still kind of coming off from the moon card. And I had to think about the sun card going like, well, what is this in my life? If it's be your truth, what does this mean to me? Well, that means being my optimistic, fun-loving, positive version of who I am. That means being my loud self. That means being the idealistic, hopeful person who's a dreamer, who talks about her dreams and is quite okay with having fantasies about a better tomorrow. Has anyone said like that to you where you're like, that's not reality? Like, we have to do this. This is reality. And you're like, well, you know what? Like, I'm not there with you, but if that makes you happy, then that is what you should do. But I can't sit there with you in that frequency because that's not my sun card energy. That's not me being my truth. And if I remember correctly, after the sun card, I think is the world card. And I remember earlier in this whole process going like, how do we even get to the world card if we have to go through so much chaos? How do we do it? It's just a cycle. All of it is just natural and normal, and that's why life is messy. It's part of I know that most of us don't want the messy part of being human. And I've been in my head, been calling myself my own messy human doula because I'm like, I feel like I'm being guided, I'm being supported, and I'm being told by the divine source, like, I believe in you, I like you, everything is okay. I know it doesn't feel okay, but everything is okay. And then it felt like the divine source is coming through and saying, like, that's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be doing this. You are a natural storyteller. I literally tried making 2 different podcasts of this exact specific story of my Nana, and they were saved at all. I was so upset by it. So I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to do a video. I'm going to post it online on YouTube because I really loved my Nana, and I love my dad, and I love my mom, and I miss my Nana. I didn't really get a chance to really get to know her. I would do phone calls with her, talk to her as often as I could. And it was clear that she really did like being a grandmother. But I never really felt like I knew who she was. It never really, I felt like it was really hard having conversations with her. And I think she just was so good at keeping secrets that I don't know if she even knew who she was anymore. Because I would have these conversations, so try having a conversation with her, and it felt like I was the one filling the blanks a lot, in terms of dialogue. And it made me really sad because I wanted to have a conversation with her, but I'm like, I feel like it's just me rambling. And so I'd be happy sometimes just to pass the phone back to my dad, but I would always religiously take that call, even when I was like, oh God, it's Nana. Like, I love Nana. I want to talk to her. But I want her to talk to me. I want her to talk to me. She was just too good at keeping her secrets. And that now we come to the point where secrets are dangerous. They kill us. They demoralize us. It's another form of repression. You know, sometimes we keep secrets about things, bad things that happen to us. Sometimes we keep secrets about who we are. Sometimes we keep secrets about all kinds of different things, and we don't talk about it, or we're trying to be nice and convenient for other people because that's how we were raised, right? And I think that's dangerous because, we don't often know who people are, or we end up getting depressed, or we may have been traumatized, and then an assaultant gets, gets away with it, and he's doing his thing, and then he assaults other people because that secret stayed a secret. And I think the women who have been tired of keeping secrets are right now being villainized by both men and women because they're scared. Because a woman that's no longer willing to keep her secrets is a woman that no longer has anything to lose, or isn't afraid of losing anything anymore at this stage. Again, she's like, well, if I lose this, that, at least I'll have my integrity. You can't take my integrity away from me. And a woman like that is very powerful, and that's why men and some even women get scared. They're like, oh no, she's gonna upset the apple cart. Why aren't you staying in your lane? Why aren't you doing this? We don't like this. Play nice. And I played with this dialogue in my head where I don't want to hurt people. But then I thought, well, if I avoid hurting other people, I end up hurting myself. And then I'm like, well, what do? Do you hurt yourself, or do you hurt other people? Because you can hurt feelings, you can hurt livelihoods, but if you hurt yourself, there's sometimes no coming back from that. Because the end result is numbness. Maybe you make bad decisions, or you lose connections to friends because they don't know who you are anymore. They're like, why do I even bother showing up? Because this person just doesn't answer the phone. I had a couple friends I never was completely honest with because I wanted to be that convenient friend, and I felt like a friendship never went anywhere because I never was honest. And I had friendships that aren't honest with me in return, and they just disappeared. And I think if they were honest with me, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have been brave enough when I was younger. But I think now I'm like, I'm not as scared about emotional intimacy, but I feel like a lot of people are. And when you're afraid of emotional intimacy and other people's personal truths, that means you don't trust them, and that means you don't trust yourself. And we have a problem in society where many men and women don't trust the women that are coming out and being honest and authentic. Why should they? Because if they suddenly trust them, that means they have to give up some of their power. If they trust them, that means that these women have more autonomy over their lives. That means that what they do is actually the right choice for them at that present moment in time. And if that means then they can't control them, and if they can't control them, that means other people can't do things exactly as they want them to do. Because some people like things to stay the same. But when you're your honest, authentic self, things will change. And as someone who is getting to the point where I don't want to be depressed anymore, I'm looking at all these wonderful, courageous women out there who are definitely the sun card in motion with the Chariot. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive. Like Alexandria Cortez, man, my hero for many, many years now. I really think that I want to be my own version of awesomeness like that, where I'm brave and able to articulate like her and to not be bowled over by other people and be like, no, don't shush me. Like, I'm not here to be shushed. I don't feel like being shushed anymore. You know what I want to be? Me. And I don't think I should be shushed anymore. I shouldn't shush myself. And I don't think you should shush yourself, because you just end up depressed that way. And I'm going to wrap up. Again, if you like anything you hear, like, comment, subscribe. There could be more of these. I'm going to put them on YouTube for the time being until I get my podcast properly set up. It's going to be a slow journey. Well, as slow as anything can be, I suppose, when you're following the divine source and you're trying to do things the right way, which is following the divine source. Talking to you up there, man. And that means I'm probably at some point going to get rid of a bunch of videos that don't really reflect the Messy Human Project, because what we are going to do is try to normalize being messy and normalize acceptance of who we are, while not, allowing shushing to occur. It doesn't mean that we're going to be rude to people, because rudeness is not being your articulate, beautiful self. You don't have to be mean to be you. You just shine. So let's shine together in our messy glory. Toodaloozy.